fans, welcome back. It's Peter Hale and Zach Miller. This is the Midtown Madness Podcast. Before we get going, thank you so much for listening. And if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Helps us out a lot. Comment, whatever you want to do. This episode and the whole season of the Midtown Madness Podcast is brought to you by Two Men in a Garden. Whether you like it mild or hot, chunky or cantina style, the people over at Two Men have you covered. It's 4th of July, and I know salsa's not American, but you gotta go get some for your 4th of July party. I'm sure the gas station has it, because by the time this drops, nothing's open, ladies and gentlemen, nothing. Yeah, even if it's hot outside tomorrow and you don't want to get that spice, they have their salsa in varieties like mango, strawberry, and peach, even a sugar-free version. You can pick up their many products at any local grocery stores or online at twomeninthegarden.com. Follow them on social media at Two Men Salsa on Instagram and Twitter. Don't forget about that big event down at Ballpark Village later this month. Pete, I am coming to Billiken Nation in transit, so to speak.
In transit, you're in the back of a box truck right now.
Yes, I am.
Your sound and light are pretty good given the circumstances.
Yes, I have finally got out of the godforsaken apartment that I lived in for the last year and a half. So, moving on to other things, other places, still in St. Louis, but, hopefully the background is not sparse, for long. Pete, we're talking, I mentioned a home, right? Apartment's a home. Well, Kevin Lisch is coming home. He's going to be back in St. Louis.
He is. And we're seeing that he's working with Scott Highmark at Mosaic Family Wealth. We've had both Kevin and Scott on the show, and Scott's obviously pretty far along in his career there. Been in the financial game for a long time now, over 20 years. And Kevin been in, obviously professional basketball in both a playing and coaching capacity in Australia. And we kind of, when we had him on the show for our extra long 2-parter last year, he did talk about, I don't know what I'll do, but, coming back home is a possibility. Getting into coaching is a possibility. He kind of left it all on the table out there. So here's one of those 2 steps. Whether he would get back into coaching now, I don't know, because to get into college coaching at this point probably means a lot of moving around, right? And not getting paid a whole lot. And he's got 4 kids, if I remember correctly.
They both Harissa and Kevin have a lot of kids between the 2 of them.
I'm the oldest of 4. I have 2, and it's way more than I can handle. So I don't know how it's possible.
0 is more than I can handle at the moment. I have one child myself that I struggle to take care of every day.
If you ever need one, as part of like a Scared Straight program, you can have one of mine for a weekend. But
oh my God.
Regardless, getting into college coaching at the entry level is really hard to do when you're a little bit older, a little more established, maybe used to a certain lifestyle, not wanting to move your family around, things like that. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes from here. He might just stick with Scott and stick with this. I mean, I imagine for this kind of job, he might have to get his CFA or something like that.
They made it a lot easier these days to get your Series 7. It's some bullshit.
Did they?
Yeah, I took it.
I have no idea.
I took it back in 2017 and failed it by 1%, but they broke it up. It's a tough test though. It's really tough. Yeah. I mean, this is great for him. It's you got that Billiken alumni brotherhood or whatever you want to call it. Coming home and building a career after basketball. It's not easy, and kudos to him for making this big jump.
And honestly, it's going to be cool to see him around, right? Yeah. I mean, we know we're going to see him at games and around campus and stuff like that. It's in his DNA, he's a competitive, he's probably, of everybody we've ever talked to, he's like the most naturally competitive person. So you know he's not going to be too far from a basketball court for long. He's going to want to at least get out there and
the MAC team just got better.
that's right, or wherever he shows up.
Yeah,
I love and seriously go back and listen to those shows if you
they're
haven't
so
listened to them.
good.
The interviews with Lisch. I love his story about going out to the Eagles, St. Louis Eagles AAU tryout just to prove he could. And then, basically making the team and saying, no, thank you, and walking away. He's just like, I don't know. He has
He has
just
he's like a wholesome Lance Armstrong. Like Lance Armstrong, Lance Armstrong beat cancer just because he's that type A.
yeah,
Like that competitive. That Lance Armstrong didn't die of cancer because he's that competitive. He wasn't gonna let it win.
but Lish is the kind of guy who would never break a rule on the way
Right.
either,
You
nor
know,
nor
yeah,
force anybody else into it either. I mean, like
he's the
the
public access Lance Armstrong. He's the PBS Lance Armstrong.
I know there are a lot of other very competitive sports figures throughout history who are less of an issue than Armstrong, but regardless, Lish himself is a supremely confident dude.
Yes.
One of our favorite Billikens of all time, and it's good to have him home. And it really is cool when you kind of stop and think about how many of our great players are still around the St. Louis area, and who pop in and out of the arena sometimes. So it'll just be cool to have him around again, and hopefully the move and everything is good. And I know it's when one spouse is from Australia and the other one's from North America, I know how that's got to be hard, right? I mean, like I'm from St. Louis, my wife's from Cincinnati, and that's hard enough. Let alone when you're halfway around the world. So hopefully it's a smooth transition for everybody in their family too.
Next, we'll be waiting to find out when Cody Ellis decides he's gonna come back with family in town.
Yeah, that would be great. That would be great. And someday, that generation, their kids' generation, Slew's got to get in on them, class,
Absolutely.
whatever class they are now, 2034 or whatever. I'm not going to do the math.
In July I had to get a Tour de France reference in there. Pete, we got some news. This has felt like maybe the longest off season in the history of my fandom. But we're one step closer, and we now know who we will play twice in conference and who we will only play once.
We do, and I'm going to run through these and I want to kick it off with your thoughts on these.
Oh, we're going to react, Pete.
For our home and homes, we've got Dayton, Loyola, VCU, and St. Joe's. Home only, we've got Davidson, Fordham, George Washington, UMass, and Richmond. And then away only, St. Bonaventure, Rhode Island, Duquesne, George Mason, and LaSalle. So looking at these matchups, we don't have dates, anything like that. What are you thinking? Just a quick glance at this.
Rhode Island on the road scares me. Every game on the road scares me with this team we're about to throw out there.
Sure.
Bonaventure, miserable road trip. I like our home and homes. I like that we got UMass at home. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't see anything too crazy. Glad we don't have to go to Belk. That I buried the lead there big time.
Hey, we won there last year. The curse is over.
Yes, we did. Pete, what about you, man? You're the bigger basketball mind. And I'm just the chucklehead who just lays it out for you.
Well, I don't know that that's necessarily true.
No, of course, no, I'm just being.
I'm just faking it over here, but for real, like, so you look at the home and homes, Dayton and Loyola. We keep the Western rivalries. From what I understand, Dayton and Loyola themselves might not have each other head to head. I didn't look at everybody else's, but I thought that was weird. I thought they would keep the three of us together. And then VCU. So that's three out of the same four we had last year. The only difference is St. Joe's. I think Davidson was our fourth home and home last year. So St. Joe's, what is it, year 5 of the Billy Lang era right now? They were right around the 200 line in the net last year. I don't know. I think it's cool that it's a guaranteed another game in Philly for Medley and anybody else from the Northeast. That's cool. But otherwise, it's really the other three that are the bigger deal. Loyola is going to be better. Dayton and VCU were the only teams in conference to finish above us in the net last year. So it's a tough grouping for home and home overall. Looking at our road games, I want to go to those first. You say Bonaventure's a tough road trip, of course. You got to think Rhode Island's going to be better in year 2 of Archie Miller. Duquesne, I don't know if they're going to be any better than last year. Same with, I would think LaSalle in year 2 of Fran Dunphy is also going to be better. George Mason's in transition. They've got a new coach. They've got a lot of exciting transfers in there. We just don't know what they're going to look like this year. I wish we could play them in like November. A team like that. And then when you get to our home schedule, there's not, I don't know if looking at the 10 teams that are either home only or away only, I don't know what group of those 10 really is going to draw more fans or more interest or anything like that. I think once you get outside of Dayton, Loyola, and VCU, which we have home and homes with all of them, I don't know that anyone else really moves the needle in terms of fan interest. So I kind of throw that out.
I mean, maybe you have some Fordham alumni. Compare like Fordham's the one that you'd probably have alumni.
Yeah, I can't imagine any of those other schools have alumni clubs in St. Louis.
Davidson, that's a name. Steph Curry, the obligatory Steph Curry reference.
Right. Slew sign guy gets George Washington in the house. That's always good.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned that he won't be wearing the right shade of blue.
I think he's still true blue, not revolutionary blue.
Yeah.
And
the Colonials are coming to town.
And then UMass and Richmond. Look, I think Tyler Burton's gone, so I don't really know what Richmond's going to look like next year.
I couldn't name a single player.
Yeah, like that generation of guys that we saw so many times, your Goldens and KO and Gilliard and all those dudes. Francis, they're all gone. Burton's finally gone. So yeah, they're just a whole new team to us. And UMass it just seems like kind of a mess under Martin. Look, I'm looking at the schedule and I've kind of sort of paid attention to what other teams have done this offseason. I don't think this league is really going to be much better than it was last year, Zach. And that worries me. I guess it means the opportunity is wide open for a team like SLU that lost so much in terms of veterans and well-known players. We will look a lot different for the first time in a while to everybody else in the league. And yeah, I don't know. Once you get outside of our home and homes, there's not a lot of here to kind of grab at. That's too exciting. I guess I will say, I think you're right. Davidson, Fordham, UMass, those are not places that we've looked good on the road lately. So I think this is probably more favorable than not in terms of the home and away single matchups. I think I'd rather go to Rhode Island and Duquesne and Mason and LaSalle than those. Bonaventure, not as much, but overall, I think this is kind of a favorable draw, given that we expected VCU, Loyola, and Dayton in our home and homes.
Yeah, I agree. I think especially the league. I don't see anything here. Like there's nothing like Rhode Island. I could see finishing 4th or 5th. I don't see Loyola making a huge jump. Dayton, Loyola, Rhode Island, Bonaventure, SLU. I've heard good, like people are Bonaventure's kind of a sexy pick, right? I feel like. But this conference looks like ass. You're right.
Yeah.
Like the more I go down this list, I'm like, Dayton's the favorite. VCU will Dayton or VCU, of course. I don't think we're gonna finish. I think we'll get a bye. That's my hot take, and I don't know why. I can't see this league being that good.
There's going to be somebody's going to be surprising, right? Like Duquesne was picked to finish last year, and they won 20 games. They were what, about 500, a little over, game over 500 in conference. I don't remember exactly. They finished 137 in the net, which is way better than anybody expected. Bonaventure was 200, St. Joe's 201. I mean, look, Bonaventure, if they're being picked right now as a top 4 team, a 200 team last season would have to jump. I mean, if the league shakes out like it did last year, they'd have to jump into basically the 100 to 125 range pretty much to guarantee a 4 spot. I don't know. I don't know if I see. I mean, I guess I'm talking about overall strength and not league record, but that, I guess that would be kind of indicative of where they are. And I'm not sure Bonaventure made that level of moves, or if they have that level of guys coming back, to a 200 team. That that doesn't do much for me. I would much more be looking at like a Rhode Island, to be a surprising team this year, or VCU after a coaching change. It seems like they made the exact right hire, and then he made a series of exact right moves in terms of reloading. So I still think they're a top 2 or 3 team with a shot to win it. Dayton brought more guys back than we thought they might. So they're going to be pretty good. I think Dayton and VCU are going to be picks for me. Outside of that, I just throw my hands up and say I really don't know. Bonaventure will be better. Rhode Island will be better. LaSalle will be better. We will not be. So it's just a question for those other teams. How much better? Will Fordham be able to sustain it? Will Davidson be able to kind of get back to a level that's more in line with Bob McKillop than his son? So I don't know. It's more question marks than we've probably ever had coming into a league season.
Pete, you were on this next piece of news pretty much before anyone I know. But Illinois State, we have a home and home, and I don't know if they're home and home worthy.
I got to tip. Yeah, I got a tip on this a while back. I don't know, 5 or 6 weeks ago. Their time is a flat circle at this point, and like you said, feels like it's been the off season for a year and a half. So I have no idea how long ago, but it was several weeks ago, and they said it was all but done at home and home with Illinois State, and I found this out. I think it was the same day that Dayton publicly announced a home and home with Northwestern, and I was kind of like, oh, that's a good one. It's a Big Ten team, pretty close geographically speaking. They're a team that has been finally starting to make the NCAA tournament. That's a nice home and home to get. And then I hear we get one with Illinois State, who, obviously not a Big Ten team. It's a Valley team. I don't mind playing Valley teams. They're not a particularly good Valley team. We were talking about Bonaventure being 200 in the net. They were 283 last year. They were 11-21 overall. Look, one of the things that we've heard Ford and the other coaches say is how impossible scheduling is right now. They're locked into their home games. They're locked into their MTE for this season. The big trick, he said, is you can line up anybody to play. He said so many teams will take a home and home, but they want to start at their place this year, and we can't do that. He said we're just like, we're legally bound right now. Any home and home we get, we have to start at SLU. So I think what we're going to see is a couple home and homes like this that seem like more of a reach, a kind of a bottom tier Valley team last year, unfortunately. And then we're going to see probably more bye games than usual. We're going to see a lot of one-off games against teams that most people don't really think much of. And I think that's going to be what the schedule is going to look like. It's not, unfortunately, there's not a lot we could do about it. We're already going to Drake, and that was the top team in the rankings in the Valley last year. Bradley, Indiana State, Belmont, all stronger. And then you get to SIUC, who we're already playing. So yeah, it's just tough right now. It's tough out there. I understand their limitations, and I am sympathetic to that. I still am a little bit disappointed at this level. Maybe I'll try and get out to Normal next season. I've never seen a game up there. but it's not the most exciting road trip either.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, again, I totally understand the limitations, but you can't like pigeonhole yourself into that corner or whatever. You can't back yourself into that corner. You have to be forward thinking, and you have to set yourself up so that you're not screwed when it comes down to, finishing your schedule. And I mean, I'm sure there are some COVID implications still trickling down. Okay.
In fact, I think all three of our road games were impacted by COVID because NC State, we had a home and home with them for years, and I think we're only now playing the second leg of that. We wound up playing the first leg of it in that COVID season where we were scrambling to put a schedule together at the last minute.
That was the one where the players didn't travel.
Yeah, I think they had 9 players or something like that. And then Drake was one we were supposed to play them out in Vegas in a neutral game that was canceled, and we set up the home and home there for with them, and they came to our place last season. And then I think SIUC, that's one where I think we asked them to push the home game back last year, and maybe even it was the year before that too, but this is one we've been kicking the can down on the road, and we finally have to make the return trip. Like Dayton, that was one before we joined the A10. Carbondale and Dayton we just had like an ongoing home and home with those two teams. We just every other year, and that was fine. That was, at the time, it was a good level of home and home for us. But anyway, yeah, all three of our road games are the result of those pandemic issues.
Pete, we heard some smoke. Actually, it's not smoke. I think Frank just outright said there was going to be a Euro combo guard. Frank, he had high praise for him.
He called him a difference maker. And look, Frank's Frank's a cheerleader for the program.
And we appreciate that.
We do appreciate that. I wouldn't mind having more of those. But I don't know, Zach. I mean, that's all we've got so far. That was what, early to mid last week. And now we're early to mid this week. And we haven't heard anything.
Did it get lost in the mail across the ocean?
Yeah, we haven't received the transom yet.
It was on the plane carrying Tom Hanks in Castaway.
We don't know yet what it is. We do know the program tweeted out yesterday. It's a great day to be a Billiken.
Did they do the eyes? Did they do the eyes too? Because you got to do the eyes.
I don't think they did, but maybe that was their sort of opaque way of saying, like incoming, like a lot of programs like to, or coaches like to tweet that sort of thing, when they do have somebody on the line. So who knows? I don't know, but regardless, we think that this is going to happen. We just don't know any more details or timeline or anything yet.
Yeah, do we think it's going to be a freshman, or do we think it's going to be a transfer?
I would think a freshman. If it's
just what we need,
Euro,
more youth and inexperience.
At this point, I don't mind. I'm just run them out there, man. Let them play. Let's see who's good. Let's see who's going to make the rotation, and let's roll with it. I do kind of like that we are. We always play like we always have a shitty season when we're expected to do well. Right. So what does it feel like again? It's been a while when we have no expectations. We know who Jimerson is. We know who Hargrove is. And I would argue beyond that, everyone else is a mystery. People think they know who Parker is or Hughes, but those guys, you're talking about guys who played 8 minutes a game, and now they're going to be starters or serious rotation players. We just don't know. We don't know if right now, the guy who would probably start at center, we don't know if he's even going to be allowed to play this season. The transfer from Georgetown, Brad Azawira, we don't know. It's we've got other bigs who are just a complete mystery. We think, I'm pretty sure at this point, Tim Dalger would start, the guy from Tulsa, the grad transfer, but look, we just don't know what this all looks like yet. So it's going to be fun to just kind of sit there and watch. Like, okay, instead of knowing every player and who they are and how they play and how it's going to work, and with all of those expectations that we had last season, it's just like, I'm just going to sit back and, what happens. And if these last two scholarships, it seems like it's going to be a big, and if Frank's right, it's going to be this Euro combo guard. Positionally, that's what we need. So yeah, let's roll with it and see what happens.
Speaking of bigs, Dandridge, Bueller.
I had
What's
to put him
going
in.
on with this dude?
I had to put him in the notes because now I think we're in like week 7 or 8 of. I think it's like week 7 of waiting on to see what this guy's going to do, and I'm still not seeing any sign that there are other teams involved besides SLU and Memphis. And all that's happened in the last week is Memphis got a commitment from the best available big on the transfer market. What's Brown, the guy from Louisiana, who
they're
averaged...
not waiting on Dandridge.
No, they're not. No, they're not. So like now all of a sudden they've got a guy who's going to start at Memphis. I don't know what this does to Dandridge's minutes. But look, Dandridge is a local guy. He played for Penny in high school. There's a lot of history there. So obviously I think sentimentally he'd like to stay home, but like maybe SLU is a better opportunity minutes wise and otherwise for him. So it just, we said this last season, or sorry, last week, last show. Ford has stressed that we want guys who want to be here.
Yeah.
And when you make a team wait this long, it sure doesn't feel like that. So
it's like he's waiting for some major opportunity to materialize.
Yeah, and maybe that's an NIL opportunity, and maybe he's just playing everybody off each other. But I just like I have a question of how much leverage there is right now when I don't think Memphis, whatever offer there is going to go up now that they've got another big dude.
There's no leverage anymore.
It's almost like he wants SLU to bid against themselves. So I would just kind of say, take it or leave it. I think
we know from what we've heard from the Billiken Victory Fund, from Travis, from Harry, we're not bumping up the check amount. We're not scratching it out and putting another 0 on there.
If he were like the guy Memphis just signed and we were one of 2 teams in a race for him, yeah, I would. Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, he's been a role player at Memphis, and I think he's a good player. He's got a lot of good tools, but like fairly limited production. And I don't know what his upside is as a 5th-year player. I would just say like he kind of is what he is at this point. And like I'm not going to break the bank over him.
Is it possible that the difference is whether Azawiro gets a waiver?
A waiver.
Because that's playing time.
But also like then you get into like, well, how nobody knows how long that's going to take, right?
That's true.
Dandridge can't be over there going like, well, I'm either going to be the guy who gets all the minutes, or I'm going to be splitting with one more experienced player, even though Brad's a 3rd-year player. I don't know.
Well, no use in continuing to talk about somebody we don't have. The NCAA, I love that we're like the NCAA and NIL and transfers is like when you were playing basketball. It's like that commercial where the kid where he's like, I'm the greatest hitter alive, and then he misses. And he says, I'm the greatest hitter alive, throws it up again and misses. It's like changing the rules. It's like you missed a shot. Wait, hold on. There was a shot clock issue. Like, it's just going to keep rolling the ball downhill until we're back where we started.
It's like watching my son and his friends play any sports out in the yard. Like all 3 of them are playing with a different rule book, and all 3 of them are changing the rule book on the fly to suit whatever just happened to them right at that
What's
moment.
The game called? I win. Why?
Yeah,
because the only rule is I win.
That goal didn't count, and let me tell you why. And like it's all
a think piece.
It's ridiculous.
by Deadspin.
And they all won and nobody lost. And they it's tense and it's hard to watch, but regardless, the thing that the NCAA said in a memo last week is now members have to comply with NCAA rules regardless of state laws.
Fair.
I mean, I guess it's the one thing that levels the playing field, but at the same time, it's pretty weird. And there aren't a whole lot of agencies that try and pull that or organizations.
This is
that
the
try and pull that.
NCAA, baby.
Well, and I guess what they can do is like, okay, you're complying with the laws of the state of Missouri, but those don't comport with ours, so we can still penalize you in this way or that way.
It's like that whole it's like free speech doesn't work for like school or whatever, you know what I mean? Like private school, like free speech doesn't count, like that kind of thing.
Oh yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I guess I'm trying to think of another analogy too, because
okay, how about private school? The rules of a private school, even if you're not breaking the law, you can still get in trouble.
Sure, right.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just like where does your funding come from? Kind of determines like exactly what rules you have to follow and what applies to you and blah blah blah. But I mean, I just find this interesting because the NCAA has felt like a fairly weak and increasingly toothless behemoth in recent years, and it's just going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. And we don't know yet. I mean, we went over some Missouri state law changes last month, and that we think will be more favorable to SLU, even though they were intended to boost Mizzou football and basketball. So yeah, we just don't know how it's going to play out. But the one thing we're seeing, Zach, Jeff Goodman tweeted, based on kind of what he's seeing in football and what's starting to happen in basketball, is it looks like two-time transfers are having a harder time getting a waiver than they expected. And where this affects us, we just teased a minute ago, is as a Weiro, we don't know if he's going to get his waiver or not. We felt we were getting word that they were fairly confident, but like now, if the NCAA is taking a different tack this offseason, I don't know, that could impact him. It won't impact our other transfers like Dalger. He's a grad transfer. But as a Weiro played at LSU as a freshman, Georgetown as a sophomore, coaching changes at both schools that he was at, but the NCAA has already said that's not a valid reason for a transfer. There's got to be another reason. So we just don't know yet with his one. So, but I would be interested to see if this is like the one kind of area where they start to assert themselves, before kind of going head to head with schools over some of their state laws.
Thank God I muted myself because I just tried to talk over you. So I'm like, I'm self-censoring, but no, I think it's weird that they're just putting out rules in the middle of summer. Like you think about them, it's like they should add these rules in the middle of the season. Like, why are we adding these outside of the school year? Like, if you want to put in a rule that involves transferring, do it between the months of October and May. If you want to put in a rule about, I don't know, second man on the floor is called for a foul every loose ball, put that in the summer. Like what are we doing? Like you have to put in a standard for when a rule can be adjusted. You can't just add this rule in the middle of the summer when all these kids are deciding to transfer based on the rule at hand and the waiver situation. And now that's so terrible. Like that's worse than that's worse than members or NCAA saying, the rules have to be followed regardless of state laws. Cause that's at any time, right? That can apply at any time. But this, you have to keep giving out waivers until October.
Yeah, I think anybody that has entered the portal before you sort of changed the approach you're taking to waivers, they should still be subject to whatever rules were in place or procedures were in place when they entered the portal, right?
But no extra.
And it's been so weird to me that they explicitly say coaching change alone is not a reason for a transfer. Because I'm like,
wild.
what better reason for a transfer is there? I mean, like the reasons they give are just kind of weaker to me than coaching change, because
Yes.
players commit to coaching staffs just as much as they commit to the institution. If the coach
Almost,
can
yeah.
if the coach can up and leave with no penalty, then I think his players should be able to. And if everybody wants to stay and play for the new hire or the assistant who just got promoted or whatever, that's great. But I would, if anything, I think they're doing it backwards. I would be a lot tighter on reasons that are not coaching changes and a lot looser on coaching changes, because to me that's like a concrete thing. And the reasons they give are things we actually thought the most convincing one was like just mental health, or like the one that the kid could give the strongest case on. The other two reasons I didn't think were a very frequent occurrence or a very strong, I don't know, reason for a
What
waiver.
was it?
I have to honestly, I have to go look it up now that I'm mentioning it, but um, I don't understand the thing about coaching changes not being a reason, even for two-time transfers. To me, that's the one thing that's like, yeah, we don't want you playing at 4 schools in 4 years. I totally get that, what a mess that is to deal with. But I think that there's an automatic waiver, in my opinion, for a coaching change. I just like that. What a cut and dry. If we're allowing this, then we should allow, players to move too.
Yeah, I think they're gonna have to restrict obviously they're heading that way, but I think it's gonna have to happen where, say you transfer once, that's it. Um, you can transfer again, but you have to, I don't know what, like, say, I guess you could go just straight back to sitting out a year on the second transfer. I think at some point, though, they're gonna have to figure out this entering of the transfer portal. Looking at, of course, our situation here with Yuri Collins, you have all these people that are, all these players that are going into the portal and then going back to school. I think at some point they're just gonna have to say, look, if you enter the portal, you can't go back. Like,
Right.
and I don't know how you even legislate that, because that's a shitty thing to tell someone. But like, if you like, you better be damn sure that you're going to transfer if you enter the portal. And again, I'm just spitballing, trying to come up with ways to avoid tampering. You know what I mean? That, I feel like that's going to be the biggest thing, is just players entering the portal because they know they have an offer.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's
That's
hard.
just straight up stealing players at this point.
Right. The hard restriction there is if somebody enters the portal and then they want to come back based on the new hire sort of thing. So I almost think there should be like
Right.
like a time period after a coaching change is made. Um, Something like that. But look, I don't know. This is all a mess. I don't.
There are like, this is the, you know how like, it's Vietnam.
There are no rules.
No rules. Oh, slam ball's starting now, end of July. That's exciting. Speaking of
I
no
I
rules, I'm
I
sorry.
knew that
The rules was what really brought that up.
I knew that would be exciting news for you. And by the way, I've been Googling furiously here, trying to figure out what those 3 reasons are, and I cannot find them. Just to
They already deleted them.
just to show you how difficult it is. Like if I'm just like a kid trying to transfer right now and I can't even find what is allowed and not allowed. You're really leaning on your compliance director at your school, by the way.
Did I see that it, oh, go ahead.
Here we go. All right. A waiver process remains available for undergraduate student athletes who do not qualify for the one-time transfer exception. However, there have been changes made to the types of requests that will be considered. An undergraduate transfer waiver will only be considered for student athletes who transfer for reasons related to physical or mental health and well-being due to exigent circumstances outside the student athlete's control, which would
Coaching
be,
change.
well, no, they don't include coach. They're talking about like people who are victims of crimes or discrimination or something like that. Like think of like the New Mexico State situation,
Yes.
something like that. And then the third reason is an assertion involving diagnosed education impacting disabilities. So that's right. So those, excuse me, those two reasons right there are certainly valid reasons, but what I was saying before is they're less common reasons. So I feel like anybody applying waiver is going to try and claim mental health and well-being. And I just don't, I hate that people have to like try and play up their circumstances instead of just saying, I committed to play for this coach and he's gone. What do you want me to do? Now a new guy comes in and tells me I'm not going to play. Like that should be, to me, that's like a very easy reason to give a waiver. So anyway, I don't know what Azawiro, like he wasn't, to my knowledge, he was not a victim of any circumstances at Georgetown. I don't think there's a diagnosed education impacting disability situation. So he's going to have to claim mental or physical health and well-being. And I don't know how convincing a case he can make given that. I wish they would have like more concrete reasons than just those three, one of which is not very concrete. So anyway, those are all certainly valid reasons to transfer. I just like, for the undergraduate transfers who entered after the deadline or who are a second time transfer, I wish there maybe some more options there. That's all.
Let's talk about some offers. That's why people, that's why you're the best, really, is the recruiting obsessiveness that you just follow recruiting as closely as anybody I know. So let's talk about Cash Polk, which is a great name.
It's Cash with a K.
Yeah,
too.
with a K, so he's cool. Yeah, this is surprising that we're still in on him.
It is, because this is a name that I first came across in like September of last year as somebody Phil Forte was kind of keeping an eye on. He's a Texas kid, right? He's 6'9", he's 195 approximately weight. He's a wing from Argyle, Texas, Argyle High School in Argyle, Texas. And he plays for Houston Hoops, Nike EYBL AAU team. Yeah, I mean, so he's one of those names that I had kind of filed under. Now that Forte is gone, we're probably not recruiting him anymore. But here we go with an offer. And he thanked Ford and Thomas for the offer, by the way. So the new hire and the head coach get the credit, I guess. Long, skilled player. He's kind of an inside-out type of player. He's got some flair to his game. I guess if you're named Cash with a K, you've got to have a little bit of that, right? He's a good spot shooter on the perimeter. He can pull it up in the mid-range. He's becoming more aggressive as a slasher, seeing a lot of more of that in his game as he's gotten older and bigger. He's a solid rebounder. He can also pass it a bit. He's got a pretty good offer list right now, not extensive, but good quality here, with Oklahoma having just offered recently, Porter Moser. Texas A&M offered a while back, and then he's got Rice and Cal Poly rounding out his group of 5. His sister plays volleyball at TCU. They haven't offered, but they are involved in his recruitment. So that'll be one to keep an eye on as well.
I'm excited for him to commit to North Texas.
Bite your tongue.
Pete, you're gonna have to say this next name for me, because I can't. I'm bad with this. I have no idea.
Yeah, Xavier Robinson. It's AZAVIER. My wife, the Xavier fan, would not accept that.
No, I can't either.
She gets upset when people say Xavier. So
Oh.
when you've changed it completely, yeah, she wouldn't go for that. But he's from Indiana. He's another 2025. I guess I should say this. These are both guys who are going to be juniors in the fall. But he's smaller. He's a 6'1", 180-pound point guard from Lawrence North High School, which is kind of a powerhouse program in Indiana.
Is that Greg Oden?
Yeah, he did go there, among other, high-level recruits since then. And he plays for George Hill, all Indy AAU. He's got a strong frame. He's actually pretty solid. I said he was smaller, but he's a stout, like a stout 6'1", 180. Really tough player, really athletic. He always in attack mode. He gets to the rim. He finishes with either hands. He's got tight handles. He can shoot it, but he's a little bit streaky. Like you'll see, I found games where he's just like completely gone off. Like he'll score like 40 or 50, but then that's not like the most consistent thing, right? So like I think when he heats up, when he's in the right mode, he can really pile it up. But when he's not, he knows kind of when to take it himself or make plays for his teammates. And then he also has a reputation as kind of a lockdown defender too, which you always like to see. The other offers he's got right now, as he's really starting to blow up, St. John's, Notre Dame, Oklahoma State, TCU, Central Florida, Temple, East Carolina, Indiana State, Toledo, Northern Illinois, IUPUI, and Texas Arlington. So a pretty big group already forming for his services. But I think this is a good offer. You know, we're a lot closer school, and we'll kind of see like as a 6'1" point guard who he doesn't have the look of a guy who's going to get much bigger. I don't know that we're going to see like the Big Ten get involved with offers, for example. Maybe not. But if high school players are still being undervalued, he looks like a guy who could be a steal to me.
It's so interesting to see who like when there are like big conference schools that get involved, but like not a bunch of them. It's just so interesting to me to see how like, you know, especially with Cash Polk, you look like Oklahoma and Texas A&M got involved, but not, you know, TCU didn't offer, right? It's
Right.
kind of just weird how that goes.
Well, there's a lot of time left on these guys. Like this is the summer where a lot of that rising junior class will really blow up. It's going to be another year before you really know what level these guys are. And then and then now it's always the spring surprise. Like a little under 2 years from now, when these guys are just finishing up high school, if any of them are still around, you kind of never know what level they're going to go at. Like all of a sudden, there are guys who have really blown up right at the end, and then there are guys who kind of fade into obscurity, you know, and go to a lower division with the hopes of coming up later. But regardless, you know, like yeah, you're right. It's just getting involved at this point. You just never really know with the power conferences how long that offer is going to really be valid, and how their needs are going to change in the next couple seasons.
Pete, let's get into I feel like it's been a successful tournament so far. Let's get into the Elite Eight. It is set. There are some upsets, some chalk. Let's get through it.
The way the first little region here went, I guess we could call it, you thought maybe it would go a little more chalky, but it got really upset heavy after that, Zach. In the first one, we had a 1-18 matchup, Conklin and Claggett. Conklin of the Conklin Summer, the guy who has the reputation as one of our most improved players ever. But I thought the argument for Claggett's sophomore season over his freshman season was a compelling one, but it didn't matter. Conklin took this one comfortably.
Yeah, I mean this is a no-brainer, I think. Unfortunately, recency bias and the myth of not the myth. I don't know.
Oh, it definitely has a mythological
It is mythological. It's as
quality to it.
mythological as the Billiken. It's very fitting.
Yeah, but I mean he took almost 80% of the vote, so people certainly buy into that.
Yeah, so recency bias, Conklin Summer, Conklin moves on. This next one, I don't, you know, I don't know. I don't think there was a lot of like, I don't, there's no recency. There's not a lot of frame of reference for our younger followers. So,
Right.
I think this one could have gone either way.
Yeah, it was Ian Vayukas taking the heavy win over Jesse Leonard, 8 seed and 9 seed. Look, from a number standpoint, I seeded them 8 and 9 because they're really close in terms of, I thought, in a qualitative way, how they improved over their careers. Jesse Leonard did play longer ago than Vayukas. That has, you know, I think that's part of the reason. But Vayukas took it 84% of the vote, Zach. And that was a little more of a landslide. I thought maybe people would kind of look at the names that they didn't know and maybe they did in this case, right? Like maybe they did go back and look at both of these guys and what they did. But but I thought an 8 and 9 seed would be a little bit closer than this.
Yeah, I really don't have anything else to say on this one. I would have voted Vayukas just because I'm lazy and wouldn't have looked at Leonard. This next one I think is going to be a clear case of recency bias causing an upset.
Dwayne Evans, with 53% of the vote, ekes out a win over Marquis Perry. This is a 13-4 upset. I seeded Perry at the 4 because his name was recommended. I had to go look at his stats because I thought he was always great. But man, did he really improve every year. He really did. His production just went up and up and up until he was an all-conference player. And it was just like, what a career he had for us. What a player he was. And I know I talked about it earlier in the process of this. What a nice guy, like a quiet, competitive, but really gentle guy at the same time, who was a great teammate and a great player.
One of my all-time favorites.
I love Dwayne Evans too. I mean, like
Yes.
you and I have both raved about him at various points of this podcast.
His performance against New Mexico State was absolutely legendary.
It was, but it was just surprising to see, because when you look at his career, his freshman and sophomore years were here, but they were like same production in each year. Junior and senior years up a good notch, So like he had that big jump really only the one time. And he granted, he sustained at a really high level junior and senior year. But when you look at Perry, it's a very definitive 4-year upward trajectory to a guy who's scoring like 17 points a game. And really, we won a lot of games because of him. So very, very surprising to me result, but nonetheless, the people have spoken.
What do you think about this next one?
I think this is definitely a situation of a beloved player from a more recent era, an era that probably the sweet spot demographic of the people who follow us on Twitter are very, very fond of. So I think that's a few factors at play, right? It's the Majerus era being so beloved, and it's the age of the people participating. And I think that's the reason why Jordair Jet wins with a 77% to 23% margin over Jeff Luchtefeld.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Ryan might have had a better shot at Jordair here, but I mean, which is funny because Ryan was a 16 seed and Jeff's a 5, but I don't know. I think Jeff is just it's kind of so much further away. It's
really like, but yeah, and it's really we mentioned this a couple of rounds ago. It's understanding the assignment, right? It's like with Duff in an earlier round when he was playing. Who was it? Am I thinking of Duff or no? I'm thinking of Ryan. When he was playing Claggett, He was saying like I stunk, and then I got to be an okay player. He was good, and he was still good at the end, and I was just like, yes, that dude gets it. Like that's what it is. And this is a case where like Jordair Jet was really good, and he was just a lot better by the time he was a senior. Jeff Luchtefeld, like Ryan, didn't really do much at all his freshman year, and by the end he was a really productive, really good player. So
yeah, nobody told him there wasn't a freshman team.
That's right. Yeah. So look, yeah, Jet did improve over his career. I think there's a stronger case for him than some of his other teammates of that era. But nonetheless, I think he was a little bit more of a factor all
along. Let's talk about this next one, and it is a big upset, and I think this one has a lot to do with who's more active on Twitter.
Yes, it does. And I tried to find Charles Newberry because I think he, in terms of most improved Billikens of all time, when I looked at him, he has a very good case to be the most improved Billiken of all time. His assist numbers were gaudy before Yuri Collins. I think our second best assist guy all time in the program. And assist points, everything went up every year that he played at SLU. And then we've got John Duff, who, he put in his work, he got better, but I think he put in more work in the last week on Twitter, and I think there's a little friends and family bump that that he's getting on social media.
My guy Jeff Harris beats a super old timer.
Yeah, Rich Neiman, and this is one where their numbers in terms of like where they started and where they went aren't super different. Neiman was just he put up much bigger numbers overall than Harris, but he, his trend line was not like superb compared to some other guys, so it's not a huge upset. And obviously we're fans of Jeff Harris and everything, but I do wish some of the old timers got a better look, and I think that the next matchup is an even bigger illustration of that.
Yeah, Rob Lowe gets the win over Harold Alcorn. It's tough when your name's Harold Alcorn. Nobody wants to go back that far in the history books, unfortunately.
Yeah, the oldest player in the whole bracket, and the participation in this fluctuated over the course of the week, and this was the low vote getter, and so that was part of it too. But I wish people had kind of gone back and looked at Alcorn. But hey, by the time this was posted, we were approaching a holiday weekend, and I think interest had waned, although it did bounce back a little for our last year.
The probably most prevalent Billiken to campaign in this tournament is Chris Sloan, and he has pulled off an upset, and I am very disappointed in this one.
Yeah, Maurice Jeffers goes down to his inferior teammate Chris Sloan, but look,
Hey, he did have that one poster that played on the commercial.
Yeah, he'll be the first to tell you about that. But Sloan and Duff illustrated, it's like politics, right? Like it's not necessarily the best people; it's the people who can win a popularity contest, who can win the vote, right? Like I've seen it play out in my own schools over the years. It's not like the smartest or the hardest working or the most qualified person. It's the guy who gets the votes, man. And in this case, Chris Sloan beats a teammate of his who was actually drafted into the NBA. So what can you do? But we've got the Elite Eight. We've got number 1 Conklin against number 8 Vuyukas, 13 Evans, and 12 Jet. It's fun to finally see some of these Majerus names going head to head. We've got number 15 seed Duff against number 10 Jeff Harris, 14 seed Rob Lowe against 11 Chris Sloan. That's our Elite Eight. We'll play it out this week, and thanks to everybody who's participated.
Pete, we dove into a little mini section of the show last time. We talked about Billiken killers, and we gave a few names, but we kind of got some feedback from kind of the sluts and a couple of your buddies over there.
Yeah, I'm going to round out what I'll call the A10 first team of Billiken killers, right? Since we've been in the league, since what, 2006, 2005, 6 was our first season. Mm-hmm. I think the guys who stand out the most, we talked about Eric Williams from Duquesne, Jalen Crutcher at Dayton, Tu Holloway at Xavier, Khalif Wyatt at Temple. Last week, I want to add 3 more names this week and call it a first team, even though it's 7. I know. And then we'll kick it out to people this week on social media and kind of see what you guys think. Who did we miss in the A10? And then who before we joined the A10 were good names. So Zach, there's 3 I want to add here, and let me know if I'm on point here. Number 1, Jalen Adams at Bonaventure, who averaged close to 20 points a game against Thu in his final 3 seasons. He also has the Chaifetz Arena record for an assist by an opposing player with 14. So the generation behind him is the guys we really remember: Oshuniyi, Lofton, Welch, Adams, Attaway, the other Adams. They didn't really have any one guy who was consistently great against SLU, but Jalen was, and he was kind of like right before those guys. And then I want to add Peyton Aldridge from Davidson. So
this one is spot on.
He might not be the one that everybody thinks of right away, but when I was looking this up, He tormented SLU more than any other Davidson player over the years since they've joined the league. He scored 35 in the 2018 conference tournament, and he always led them in scoring against SLU, even over Kellen Grady, Ingvi's brother, the other Goodmanson, John Axel. And then once he left, that is the player who became their top player against us. And it really was never Grady. And then it's really been pretty spread out, even as poorly as we've played in certain games against us. It's kind of been everybody, Lee, Brockovich, and some of those. Was it Michael Jones? Some of those other guys. Every time. I'm so glad he transferred. The last one I want to add is Burton from Richmond, and he's gone now, as we said early in the show. He killed SLU in his last 3 games against us. And I think that's what it takes, right? Is if you've got 3 strong games against SLU, that kind of puts you in that stratosphere. He didn't really do anything against SLU the first couple of times. I think he's played us 5 times ever. So is 3 enough? I think it probably is. So that's kind of my top 7, Zach, in terms of A10 Billiken killers. Couple of my suggestions, couple of your suggestions, couple that I solicited from other people, but I want to put it out there to other people and make a case. Who in the A10 fits that mold, and then who from before that? Go back to Conference USA or even before that. Who are the guys who just always beat us? That's what we want to know. To kind of I don't know, put some structure to that narrative.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with the ones you added. Peyton Aldridge is perfect because it feels like he's that Euro big that we didn't have, and he just like our bigs are trying to like bully him, and he's just like, nah, dude, I'm too finesse for that. Like I'm too skilled to be bullied.
They always have that guy. They always have what feels like 3 or 4 of that guy.
It's like some sort of bizarro world version of Dwayne Evans versus Sim Bhullar. Again, we're coming like this game sticks so far into my brain. Like in the Dwayne, like everyone was worried about Dwayne Evans going up against that big, tall thing and how would he handle in the post. And Dwayne Evans just like plopped him over him. Same with, a guy like Aldridge going up against our kind of bruising big men. He just outskilled him.
Yeah, he really did. Any big man with a perimeter game, was always going to give us kind of an issue. And we've had guys like that over the years. We've had Rob Lowe, guys who can kind of step out and shoot and stretch defenses a little bit, but they've always got them, and they've got what feels like height and shooting at every position a lot of times when we play them. This last year they were a little bit different, but yeah, it's just kind of a Davidson signature. And it was funny, Zach, because when I was thinking about them, I'm like, there has to be a guy. And like he just, for whatever reason, his name didn't pop into my head immediately. There were so many names that kind of flooded. But when I actually sat down and looked at numbers, it was like, okay, yeah, he's the one.
On the women's side of the basketball, A10 matchups announced as well. We've got you know what, like this is tough. This looks tough. The away only looks tough to me.
Yeah, it really does. So let's run through these and start getting some thoughts here. Home and home, we've got Dayton and Loyola, just like on the men's side. The difference is we've also got Rhode Island and Davidson. Rhode Island, by the way, really along with UMass, they were the 1 and 2 teams last year. They've got the coach that everybody loves, and then I think they're thought to be the best or one of the best teams just consistently in the league. Then you got Davidson, so that's the 4 home and home. Home only, we've got St. Joe's, Duquesne, VCU, St. Bonaventure, and Richmond. And then away only is George Washington, Fordham, UMass, George Mason, and LaSalle. What are you thinking here in terms of how did this shake out for our women's team?
Yeah, I think obviously Fordham is a team that can that always is hanging around that top 4, top 5. LaSalle has a decent history as well. George Mason has, stepped up every few years, but has never really done anything. GW, UMass. I think you said they were kind of the cream of the crop last year, and
Mhm.
that's an away only. So that away only is tough. I like that we got VCU at home. They always put a decent team on the floor. Bonaventure, you don't have to go to Ole, and that's nice. St. Joe's, has historically put up good women's teams. There's always these that are like it feels like everybody has put up a good women's team every 3 years. And it always, except for, like your Dayton's, and your Fordhams who are kind of good every year.
Yeah,
David's,
no, go ahead.
no, yeah, Rhode Island again has been kind of the perennial right there. So home and home with Dayton and Rhode Island. Loyola's, I mean, if they're going to be bad again, that's not great for us. But
Mm.
I mean, there's no why do I care? There's no at large. Like,
Yeah, and in order to be an at-large last season, UMass and Rhode Island, things had to shake out differently at the end. One of them had to win the conference tournament. One of them had to, both of them had to not stumble in the league. But really, SLU kind of ruined it for both of them at the end. They both finished with 7 losses on the season. They both finished 14-2 in the league. They both finished in the net rankings 60 and 72. Had they kind of been a little bit higher than that, like they both had legit opportunities until the last month of the season to maybe get an at-large bid. It just had to play out exactly right, and it didn't. And the Billikens are a big reason why it didn't. But yeah, looking at this, Rhode Island is a little bit of a surprise to me. I think that feels more of like a league statement. Like, okay, if you two teams are going to be two of the better teams in the league, let's see, because that's not a natural home and home by any means for us. Farthest team away, just kind of an odd fit. But again, they were 72 in the net last year, which means UMass was number 60, the best team in the league on paper, and we get that one on the road. Fordham, as you said, always tough. We get them on the road. They were third. Were they the 3 seed last season in conference, or were we? Because we finished tied in the league. And I'm trying to remember in the conference tournament what the seeding was. But regardless, Fordham was the other team up there, and that one is on the road. So Fordham, UMass, both tough road games. You've got George Washington, who was they were 9-7, right? So they were pretty good. They were about 150 in the net, and that's that's a tough road game. And when you look across the board, George Mason, LaSalle, so all of the away only opponents were 500 or better last season. So that's definitely tough. Dayton and Loyola will be better. How much better is the question. I think you look there. And then when you look at home, St. Joe's, Duquesne, VCU, and then you've got Bonaventure, who's horrible, and Richmond at home. Richmond would be the best of that bunch. Richmond and St. Joe's just a little bit over 500. They were both 20-win teams. But I think that's a really, you probably are going to be the favorite to win all 5 of those at home.
Bonaventure just brought back a coach. They just brought back their most successful coach ever.
Did they?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So you're saying a new coach?
It's
right?
no, he's a new coach. He's like the new old coach. He's like Fran Dunphy.
Oh, got it. On the
He's a
comeback.
retread. Bonaventure, like he coached at Bonaventure like 10 years ago, and now he's back.
Got it. Okay, because they were 3-13 in the league last year, 6-26 overall, just atrocious. Loyola was even worse. Lost their last 16 games. Won 1 game in the league. Kind of unbelievable to see how much their basketball teams flopped unexpectedly in the conference. But hopefully you can grab both of those in the home and home. I know the one thing is Tillett's team is going to be motivated in those Loyola games because that one conference win they got was against SLU, and I think that kind of lit a fire under them last season.
Oh yeah,
that
game sucked ass.
Yeah, I know.
I was at that game, dude.
Yeah,
that was that for reasons off the court it stunk, but on the court it was just it was some of the worst basketball I've ever watched.
Right.
men
Right.
or women. Like it was like watching the Washington Generals play each other.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was a
Not,
Washington Generals intra-squad scrimmage.
but look, it was a turning point, right? I mean, like, because on paper, SLU last year, just when you look at the numbers, not great, but it just shows you the limitations of that, because it's all about what they did down the stretch last season. And they've got so much momentum going into this year. And it's just the question is, what can they sustain over an entire season? And can they repeat? I mean, I know they can, but there's going to be some good teams standing in their way. And this is certainly a tough conference schedule structure to get there.
Tillett tweeted out that a new Billiken is incoming, but we haven't seen a commitment yet. Of course, Pete, as you know, this complies with NCAA rules that haven't changed in 75 years.
No, I think this is going to be a 2024 commitment. Is kind of my read on it, but no, we don't know who this is yet. So I'm gonna hold off until I have more information there. But we do know there's another player incoming, and as we've discussed in previous weeks, love what she's doing with long-term recruiting. So going to be interesting to see what this one is, if it is indeed a 2024 player.
Pete, on the men's soccer side, the full schedule is out, and it is a really tough schedule, to quote Stu Durando.
Yeah, I mean, this is a statement schedule, right? They think they're a national powerhouse. This like it's a cliche at this point for us to talk about our soccer programs like this, but if you need a men's basketball analog, it's Gonzaga, right? Like they play an unbelievable non-conference schedule because their league isn't as strong. And what they've done here, they've got 7 opponents from the top 50 of last year's RPI. Butler was 40. They play Lipscomb on the road, was 13. They play SMU on the road again. They were 26. Missouri State at home was 32. Central Arkansas 49. At Loyola 41. Dayton 46. So you get a little bit from the conference there. And then they had 4 other teams that were in the top 100. So yeah, Stu is right on the money here, Zach. This one is a gauntlet, but that's not the only item that's kind of interesting on the schedule.
Yeah, no, SIUE, the bronze boot will be played at City Park.
Now that's not
I'm calling
official.
it. I'm calling it. It's happening.
Yeah, we thought it was going to happen last season, but I think the brass, for better or worse, at STL City decided that they didn't want the first match.
I think there was an
park
issue with the stadium.
Well, I know there were some electrical things and so up to the last minute kind of issues to get ironed out, but I think I'm not sure that I think they kind of also didn't want the first true game there to be SLU and not not one of their clubs.
City, yeah.
Right.
Women's soccer side, the full schedule is out. Season tickets are on sale for $40. That comes out to what, $4?
Yeah, I think I counted 10 home dates, and you cannot beat that price to see a team this good.
Not even close. RPI by opponents. They will be at BYU, by the way. A sick road trip if you can swing it. 17 in the RPI's BYU, Xavier 23, Nebraska 60, Dayton 44, at VCU 65, a few others in the top 100. Doesn't quite have the headliners of the last couple of years with Arkansas and Notre Dame and those power conference teams, but at BYU might actually be as difficult as either of those matchups. It's going to be a tough road trip. I still don't know how to get to Utah. How to fly, it's impossible to get there, just like it is Charlotte, North Carolina, not Charlotte, but Davidson. It's impossible to get there. BYU is going to be a Big 12 team. So there's your power conference road game, Pete.
Yeah, and they're actually going to be playing Utah State on that road trip as well. So so they'll get a couple of the Utah schools. They're not going to round up all of northern Utah. I know Weber State, I think, is in the northern part of the state, and so is University of Utah.
If you asked me to locate Weber State, the last state I would have said was Utah.
They were one I knew they were in the Big Sky, but I tend to think of Montana and Idaho and those kind of. And you're like, oh yeah, Utah too. Utah's got a big sky country as well. But yeah, the Weber State is indeed out there. But yeah, they're just going to be playing at Utah. Utah State, I don't think was any good last season. I'm not sure what they're going to be like this year. BYU though, that's a legit program. So
Wasn't
that'll
BYU was the team that New Mexico player pulled her hair? Do you remember that
oh
altercation? Wasn't
yeah,
it New
that went
Mexico
viral.
versus BYU?
I think you're right. That feels right. Oh man,
How do
that was
I know
brutal.
that?
Yeah. Yeah, Zach's referring to a viral video from I think it was last season where
No, this
or a
was,
couple years ago
this had to be 5, 6 years ago now.
there was a New Mexico player who just kept like really aggressively pulling the ponytail of
Yeah.
opposing players, and it was like shocking how hard she was doing it.
Yeah.
Uh, there,
Elizabeth Lambert, Making of a Monster. What the hell?
wow,
I'm gonna have to read this.
that's intense. That's intense.
Um, yeah,
But
yep.
regardless, yeah,
It was 2009.
that was that long ago because
Yeah.
I guess I only saw it in the last year or two. So maybe that's why I'm thinking that. But that's going to be an incredible road trip. It's going to be beautiful. A lot of scenery. It's also going to be a little bit of altitude that they're mostly not used to. And I guess I would say I'm glad that the soccer substitution pattern is a little more forgiving than it is the pros because I personally don't do great at altitude. So I have to imagine if other players are not used to that, that's going to be tough for some people. By the way, the full roster is also up on the official website, so they don't have like numbers or official team photos yet for the incoming freshmen who are all listed at the bottom of the roster, but the whole team is there. So go check that out if you need a little incentive to go get season tickets because it's a good reminder of just how much Zach that they have coming back this fall. That's going to be an incredible team.
I gotta say, I do love that they put the Billiken front and center on their social media as well. That's one thing I really I'm glad to see the basketball program making that concerted effort and the women's soccer team leading the way is really cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Pete, I'm excited about volleyball this season. And the schedule is out, and I can confirm there really are no non-conference home matches. And I think from what I understand, the issue was that basically the home matches that were scheduled were Kent Miller scheduled games, and the other teams backed out of those contracts.
Got it.
So and then going forward, I mean, this late in the ball game, it's hard to get teams to come play your team that may be completely revamped. So
well, and the other challenge is you're not just trying to get one team at a time, right? Like most of these non-conference matchups involve 3 or 4 teams
yeah,
all playing in the same location. Like when you go look at their schedule, they've got 4 team events down in Alabama, Central Michigan, Illinois State, and at Kansas City. They've got SIUC, and so most of these things are they're like road. I guess you'd call them MTE. I know
yeah,
that's not the
MTE. Yeah,
volleyball,
I mean
but
that's
basically
fair.
for all intents, it's not a
Yeah,
tournament necessarily. It's the little round robin where they all play each other at one school's location. So that's kind of the tricky thing there too. Is you're trying to get 3 teams to come all at once. So yeah, so between the time they start the season at SIUE on August 19th and first home match is September 22nd against VCU. So they've got 5 solid weeks there of road matches, and it's going to be an interesting test for the new coach.
yeah. I think if I'm in town, I'm gonna have to make that August 19th trip over to Carbondale and check that out.
Yeah, it's an easy one.
Yeah, and then I think that Kansas City, I don't think it's gonna work out. But yeah, I think there's one in SEMO too. There's SEMO's in
Um,
there somewhere.
yeah, now I got to pull the schedule up.
God,
I didn't put the whole thing in the
you
notes.
son of a
But yeah, so they're in Alabama, they're at Central Michigan. wait, what am I looking at here? Volleyball. Okay. Yeah. They've got, at Illinois State, they play a few teams. SEMO is one of the teams they play out in Kansas City.
That's right. That's right. So,
that's
this is what
is.
I need to know what this Kansas City, like, who's hosting it?
It's odd because the other ones are very clearly hosted by
Right.
Alabama, by Central Michigan, even though it doesn't say at the top here, this one's clearly hosted by Illinois State and includes Miami, Ohio, and New Mexico State as well. But Kansas City, we play SEMO twice and Austin P. I wouldn't be surprised.
Okay, it's hosted by UMKC.
So was one of those SEMOs supposed to be UMKC, which is now known as Kansas City?
That's a great question. I would imagine
I wouldn't be surprised if that were a typo.
Doubled up on a couple teams doubled up, but hold on, let me look at KC's schedule. Why didn't I think of that the first time?
Yeah, so that's what my thought was with that. It was probably hosted by Kansas City, and yeah, that's where we're playing SEMO, playing Austin P.
Yes. So wait, no, that's last year. Hold on. Wait, their schedule's not up yet.
Okay.
For 2023. So that's weird. So we won't know for sure. But I would imagine you are correct. Because I'm showing that Austin P is playing all three of the teams. God, I hate splash pages.
SEMO also does not have their fall schedule up yet.
Oh, I was just getting there. I need better internet.
Yeah, sorry.
All right. Well,
stay tuned.
Yeah, no, it's no home non-conference matches. Good to really test yourself early, and I'm excited for this season. Get out to their conference home matches or that SIU Carbondale match.
Yeah, for sure.
That wraps it up. Well, first of all, I want to say that if you've stuck around this long, we did get a suggestion for an off-season recap, and we absolutely are going to do that. I think we're going to wrap it up into another SLU Twitter think tank episode, which we are working to get scheduled. Whether we still have to have a tribunal as to whether or not to kick Carter Chapley out of the think tank and take auditions for a fourth member. But yeah, we'll get there soon, hopefully early August, I think, maybe late July. So we'll see where it goes. That wraps us up. We're done here. That was the Week in Billiken Athletics. Follow us on Twitter at Midtown Mad Pod, at Peter is a tweeter, at Zach Miller MMP, and on Instagram at Midtown Mad Pod. Thank you guys so much for listening. We are you guys are getting us through the dog days of summer, just knowing you guys are listening. So we appreciate it. Pete, go Bills.
Go Bills.